Good morning to everyone in New York, and good afternoon and evening to all of our partners around the world. Welcome to Global Webinar 4 as part of the NYU D-Prize Consortium. We're very excited to have this webinar hosted by our friends at BRAC University, and they're going to be telling us about social entrepreneurship and the ecosystem in developing countries through their experience in Bangladesh and working in international development in many regions. So with that, I'll let Shamim take over and take you through his content.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Rachel. Hello, Azam. Hello, everyone from around the world who are right now watching this seminar. Very welcome to the presentation that I have for you today. Today, I'm going to talk about social entrepreneurship ecosystem, especially in the context of Bangladesh, which is, of course, as you all know, is a developing country. We at BRAC University are somewhat privileged to be, to be related to BRAC, the largest NGO in the world, who have done a lot of work in the developing countries, not only in Bangladesh, but also in other countries, especially in Africa, South Asia. So they have first-hand experience with social entrepreneurship and, of course, the development scene as regards poor people and people who are disenfranchised or disadvantaged. Let me just a second. Yes, I think, yeah. So let me start by with the basics, with the definition of an ecosystem. The concept was first coined by James F. Moore. He is from Harvard, and he worked in various consulting firms, and this is a concept which came about when he wrote an article in Harvard Business Review back in 1993, and that's when this concept became popular. I think he won a prize also for coming up with the idea of a business ecosystem. The reason I start with business ecosystem is because social entrepreneurs using being embedded in an ecosystem is not actually all that different from a business ecosystem per se. So it helps to draw some parallels with the business ecosystem. You start with the business ecosystem and then draw parallels with the business ecosystem as envisioned by James F. Moore. So this is an economic community supported by a foundation of interacting organizations and individuals, the organisms of the business world. The economic community produces goods and services of value to customers who are themselves members of the system. The member organisms also include suppliers, lead producers, competitors, and other stakeholders. So that's the definition of the ecosystem. I just read it from the slide. The players in the ecosystem have, in most cases, a symbiotic relationship. They are dependent on each other, and also there should be the backdrop which enables the creation of this ecosystem. The right conditions should be there to an ecosystem to start and eventually flourish. In other words, the ecosystem will evolve once it is there. As you can see, the term ecosystem has been adopted from ecology. It's an ecological metaphor that they have used. And to make matters a little bit more clear, I have decided to show you the ecosystem of a pond, which is perhaps the most popular ecosystems. You can come across it in every science book, in high school science book. So this is basically an ecosystem of a pond, and our business system is not very different from this. As you can see, we have producers here. These trees are the producers. We have algae, fungi, and other plants and organisms which produce food for primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. You have The primary consumers are the small insects, the secondary consumers are the small fish who consume the insects, and of course the large fishes consume the small fishes. And it's a closed system which sustains itself. If you pay careful attention, you'll notice that the ecosystem in which social entrepreneurs thrive is not so very different. There are players from which the individual social enterprise or business draws benefits. There are players which it supports technically so that it can come up with the right product. There are those which finance it. They also in turn gain benefit from social entrepreneurs. There are others, obviously there are the consumers who are part of the system, who are the direct beneficiaries of the activities of the social enterprise. So is there an ecosystem for the social entrepreneurs? That's the question. I think I answered the question first. You bet there is, but what is it? Why should there be an ecosystem in the first place? Businesses want to create economic value. NGOs want to create social value. Social entrepreneurs or social enterprises wants to create both. They want to create economic value as well as social value. And at the hem of the social enterprises, you have social entrepreneurs themselves. So since a value chain is required to create these values, by default, social enterprises also have a value chain. And members of that chain, of course, form the ecosystem. And as more members are added, and it becomes rich and complex. In the case of Bangladesh, we have a very palpable ecosystem, an ecosystem which you can actually see and feel because it is a developing country. If I may forward the case of Bangladesh, which is unique in terms of its population, because we have only 55,000 square miles and we have 160 million people, a large proportion of which actually live in poverty. Although it is assumed that Bangladesh will become a middle income country very soon, but still widespread poverty, widespread social problems, issues do exist. And our economic situation, our infrastructure, our social mobility, all these things affords an opportunity to see in what areas we need interventions. I just have pasted 3 pictures on the slide to give you an idea. On our left-hand side, the photograph on the leftmost side of the slide shows a solar panel. There are still many villages in Bangladesh where you do not have grid electricity, access to the grid, so they do not have electricity. And solar panels provide an affordable means and a new technology which can be easily afforded by villagers if it is actually made available to them at an affordable price, so to speak. And that service can be provided by a social entrepreneur. And many villages of Bangladesh today are lighted by support from not only various NGOs, but various social businesses who sell these panels to the villagers, with which they can power maybe a light or a radio or a television set or charge their mobile phones. So this has created a significant difference in the lives of these rural people living in rural hamlets. As you can see, everyone here is looking with a lot of curiosity at this social panel. So this is something that exists in Bangladesh, which requires intervention. In the middle, you see during the monsoon, during the rainy season, someone is getting on a boat just to move from one place to another. Again, transportation is a huge problem. Affordable transportation that is easy for villagers to avail, especially people living in rural communities, is not there. Even in cities, there are places which are not really which do not have good access to the main parts of the city where the main economic hub of activities take place. On our rightmost side, you can see Shastho Shevikas. This is a Bengali term which means volunteer health workers. These are actually very small entrepreneurs supported by BRAC, because BRAC provides them the medicines and the training to provide basic healthcare to villagers. They are on their own, and they make a small profit when they sell medications, services, basic healthcare services like monitoring of blood pressure or blood sugar, making sure that those who have tuberculosis are able to take their drugs in the right manner. So in other words, tuberculosis monitoring is also another activity that they have undertake for a small fee. So this is another example where very small micro entrepreneurs are operating, and they're certainly creating a social impact. So at least BRAC likes to call them social entrepreneurs in that respect. Had there not been villages which do not have access to healthcare, which do not have awareness about diseases like diabetes, tuberculosis, or the risks of pregnancy, had these conditions did not prevail, you would not have had Shastho Shevikas. In other words, that is the reason why in developed countries you don't have food soldiers like these going from door to door and actually selling such services to people. So these are, in other words, what I'm trying to get at is that developing countries do require a lot of interventions to solve myriads of socioeconomic problems. There are the conditions which actually enables one to initiate a social enterprise or start a social business and grow it and get support from various other organizations which enable it to be sustained. Sorry. Let me show you now the model, social entrepreneur ecosystem model that we have created, that we have typically in the context of a developing country. So the social entrepreneur, let's assume a player, a business. If he is in the middle, it's in gray, he or she, they operate in an environment where we have a lot of bottom of the pyramid consumers or disadvantaged population, beneficiary groups or consumers. You may also call them bottom of the pyramid consumers, who need an essential service or product or some sort of advocacy, which the social entrepreneurs can provide for a price and actually, in fact, gain maybe a minor profit out of it, a small profit out of it. So the service goes to the BOP, and some price for product or fee in the guise of a fee or price paid for a product, money flows in to the social entrepreneur. In order to actually create the service and provide it, the entrepreneur doesn't act alone naturally. Nowadays, if you look at the current scene, which has evolved a great deal, you also have other social enterprises that are competing in the ecosystem. I have marked the other social enterprises in red. It's in short, it says SE, if you look at the slide. So the red ones are the competing social entrepreneurs, and the gray ones are basically social entrepreneurs which are providing a complementary service or support that either helps the social entrepreneurs or forwards its cause. So these are the two different types of social entrepreneurship or social businesses that exist in the ecosystem. The ones which compete with one another, the others which support one another or complements one another. Aside from these social entrepreneurs, you have obviously other agents which are active in other agents and stakeholders which are active in the space. We have NGOs, foreign or local NGOs, corporations, government agencies, universities, trade bodies, which provide technical support and often financial support to social enterprises so that they can start. They are often the source of seed funds. They are often the source of ideas. They can help provide manpower even when they get started. So this is one player. We have microcredit organizations. The social entrepreneurs or SEs need money, and microcredit organizations, in certain cases, at least in Bangladesh, some banks and venture capital firms provide finance to these social enterprises. And this can be financing can be done in the forms of very soft loans or even loans which carry the market rate. We also have suppliers of raw material or logistics service providers, which often retool their services or retool their products to meet the needs of the social entrepreneurs, and they supply either the product or service in that guise so that it can be used by the social entrepreneurs to manufacture the service or product which is intended for its target consumers. So therefore, suppliers or intermediaries sometimes play a vital role, and they can morph in a different way to meet the needs of the social entrepreneurs. So they are also very much part of the ecosystem. We have research organizations nowadays which are interested in the activities of social entrepreneurs or social businesses, and see how they are evolving, what sort of success they have reaped, those things. And they use the learning of social entrepreneurs for doing research or coming up with policy or products which they sell to other firms. Sometimes they sell these ideas to government agencies or maybe governments in other countries. So both research organizations and government agencies learn from social entrepreneurs. They have this role, probably a new role, which they play in the ecosystem. Large corporations are interested in social entrepreneurs and sometimes make direct investments because many of their products are targeted for the BOP, and often they channel their product through the social entrepreneurs, and eventually often they aim to start their own social enterprise or business with a different brand which has an SE approach, social entrepreneurship approach. So large corporations in Bangladesh, for example, major mobile phone companies and FMCG companies have done it. Unilever has done it. Grameenphone has done it, which is a subsidiary of Telenor. So they are also involved and interested in social entrepreneurs, and they play a role directly in the ecosystem. Lastly, but not least, are the government regulators and policymakers. I have done it in yellow to show you that, and they are placed in a corner because they influence everyone, all the players in the ecosystem. In Bangladesh, at least, there have been policies have been made by the government of Bangladesh with respect to corporate social responsibility, with respect to registration of social entrepreneurs, definitions, those things, and it is an evolving process. The jury is still out. Every year, they are redrawing the policies or incorporating new ideas to address the needs of the social entrepreneurs. And they So government regulators and policymakers do affect the ecosystem and play a role in the evolution of the ecosystem, so to speak, and it's very much part of it. In fact, government have agencies and organizations to support social entrepreneurs nowadays. In my next slide, I'll show you some examples of that, so that it becomes quite clear how that works. So here are some examples of current actors in the social entrepreneurial scene of Bangladesh, which can be very much part of the ecosystem, and which are directly related to social entrepreneurs. I have just cited a few examples. I have a we have a research which was done by British Council, and this I can certainly share with the applicants, for the D prize, so that they have a more thorough idea of what I'm talking about. So here we have the name of two business incubators who support social entrepreneurship. TechShow is the first accelerator in Bangladesh. So this was a platform which enabled that was for social entrepreneurs. Toru is an innovation hub that works with driven early stage entrepreneurs for different sectors to facilitate the innovation journey of their ideas to become a scalable solution entrepreneurs. Again, this is a Dhaka-based business accelerator. I might as well add that BRAC University itself, Center for Entrepreneurship Development, has a business incubation center here at the university, which is, I did not include it because it is only intended for the graduate students of BRAC University, and it's a small business incubator supported by funding from World Bank. And here we are open to accepting social enterprises, social entrepreneurial ideas, if they have a good business model and if that idea has market traction. So TechShow and Toru are some of the commercial examples of what we have over here under the auspices of the university. Just a second. We have ecosystem support organizations also in Bangladesh, and these are the two examples that I thought worth sharing with you. The first one is called Better Stories. It is actually the oldest ecosystem support business, so to speak, in Bangladesh, and they have worked with young entrepreneurs mostly, provided them consulting, provided them with platforms to showcase their ideas, took them to business trips or field trips to expose them to ideas, expose them to technologies, and thereby support early stage entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are in the idea stage. They have not only worked for social entrepreneurs, I mean not only regular entrepreneurs, but also for social entrepreneurs, especially green, ethical business and responsible business has been something that they have addressed a lot lately. Better Stories is also a research and ecosystem support organization which worked closely with the largest telecom service provider in Bangladesh, a mobile telecom service provider in Bangladesh, which is called Grameenphone. Grameenphone itself has an acceleration program, entrepreneurship acceleration program, which targets social entrepreneurial ideas as well as regular tech-based entrepreneurial ideas. So Better Stories have been very vibrant and active in this arena. We at BRAC have our own BRAC Social Innovation Lab. Social Innovation Lab, this is a cross-disciplinary platform for BRAC staff as well as BRAC University students. If they want, they can take advantage of this. So they are about best practices in development sector. They support in generating ideas. They bridge international organizations or special units who work in this area. For example, we have the Judge Business School in Cambridge University. Recently, they had there is a frugal innovation lab there. Frugal innovation is an idea which is very very vibrant over there, and they created the platform to have Bangladeshi entrepreneurs talk to professors from Judge Business School and experts from Judge Business School to discuss frugal innovation. Recently, they had a frugal innovation seminar here in Dhaka. So a lot of activity done by BRAC Social Innovation Lab. This is the type of player which really helps the ecosystem and makes it quite rich. We have investors. So this is the list, 3 of the most prominent investors who did direct investment in social businesses in Bangladesh. The first one is actually an India-based organization which had some operation here in Bangladesh, and the first one, so to speak, which invested in this area, in this country. So that's called Avishkar. It's a Mumbai-based firm. Basically, it tries to find out capable entrepreneurs who can take forward a social venture or project, and if they find that the business idea has good traction, it does invest there. This is a fund by Bangladesh government called SAFE, a Small Enterprise Assistance Fund. It was created in 2010. So this is a fund which supports small businesses, small and medium enterprises primarily. However, they also support social enterprises of a certain size and impact. If they find that the impact is good, they are willing to support that social enterprise. So this is not only exclusive to the SMEs which are commercial. Then we have BRAC Bank. Although a commercial bank, this is a socially responsible financial institution, and there are lots of impetus within the board of the bank to support social businesses or social enterprises or businesses which have a social slant. So this is a bank which has actually granted a lot of loan to social businesses and very much part of the ecosystem. This is the government of Bangladesh bodies, government of Bangladesh organizations which are supporting social enterprises. SME Foundation is the primary one. SME refers to small and medium enterprises, so it's quite big. They have a lot of staff and full-fledged office with secretaries to support the SMEs of Bangladesh. But although they are mandated to support SMEs, they have, recently they have launched products and support services which are targeted to social enterprises. They have expertise in order to support social enterprises. So SME Foundation is one. The next one is access to information. This is a flagship project of the government of Bangladesh, supported by United Nations Development Program as well as USAID, and it is located in the Prime Minister's organization. Primarily, they're supporting tech businesses, businesses which utilize e-commerce, businesses which utilize the web. Although that is their primary focus, they do support social entrepreneurship which have adopted technology, like maybe operating through an app or using web or any other technology platform to provide services. So as long as these companies are making a positive difference in the life of the poor or positive differences in the life of disadvantaged people, A2I is ready to support that through funding and through technical support. So access to information is another government of Bangladesh project which from which social enterprises can benefit. Finally, Bangladesh Bank is another major organization, major institute of the government of Bangladesh, which has formulated policies that can actually create positive impact for social enterprises, right? So it has formulated many policies, and it also has funds for social enterprises. So having said that, I just want to conclude with an example which I used last year, which is Sarvajal, an Indian social enterprise which provides clean, potable drinking water for the poor. So why I want to use this as an example is because Sarvajal has evolved from what it was 4 or 5 years ago. And if you look at their business, they have now partnered with many other organizations, some of them providing them technical support, some of them providing them money, some of them providing them platforms to go to other parts of India. So let me just go to their website, which gives you some idea. If you pay close attention, you will see that they are primarily supported by Piramal Group, which basically gave them the money from their CSR fund to start the business. And now, if you look at, they have partnered with HSBC, they have partnered with Nestle, there is Larsen and Toubro, an Indian farm engineering company which manufactures small machines and mechanical equipments. I think they get the filters from BSF, which is a German chemical company, and many other organizations are there. So in other words, if you look at the universe of their partners, you can see how the ecosystem in which they operate have become complex and grown, from which they are getting not only financial support but also support as consumer. In other words, they are providing raw material in terms of the mechanism or system for those water ATMs, financing, filters, those things. And obviously you have donors like Mercedes-Benz and others who are supporting them maybe financially. So this is an interesting example which I think gives you an idea as to how the ecosystem evolves and how it comes to sustain a social business which eventually becomes quite big, and a robust business model which they can adopt. So that was all my take on ecosystem for social entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurship in a developing country. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Shamim. For those questions, I see a hand raised, but we can't call on you to speak, unfortunately. So if you'd like to submit a question, you can hit the Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen and post a question there and we'll see it. You can also do it, there's a chat page as well.
Sorry, I think. Yeah.
Do students in the room have any questions, Shamim?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think they have. What will be the, okay. I think, yeah, there is one question I think I have online. What will be the fastest to implementation, the idea one might have? Should I answer live? Maybe, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. The first idea, if you have an idea, first and foremost, you need to see whether, I mean, as far as ecosystems go, the idea must have a business traction. In other words, it must be an idea which can be out of which a business model or a business case can be formed, and that has to be supported by the ecosystem. In other words, if you have devised, let's say, an inexpensive, glucometer to monitor blood sugar level, and if you do not have enough poor people or enough, economically disadvantaged people in an area with diabetic, you cannot really sell that product, so to speak. So this is what I think. The ecosystem has to be there. In this case, the number of consumers, the critical mass has to be there, who can actually benefit from that intervention or product. In other words, they must meaningfully benefit from it. If commercial products are available at a lower price than yours, then it's not going to work. It's not a solution then. Okay. Do you have any other question, anyone? Here in the room, I think they're not asking any questions at this point, because if you have questions after answering yours, maybe they will ask, yeah.
I can ask you a question, Shamim. Do you have advice when people are entering a new developing country or a new region? What are some ways to identify the different parts of the ecosystem? How do you find kind of the ecosystem in the areas that you're working in?
Yes. I mean, first and foremost, I guess they have to find the consumers. I'm calling them consumers who are going to buy the product or benefit from the service or benefit from the product, so to speak. So the solution, first part is, are there enough consumers who are willing to buy this? And then comes the question of financing. How are you going to, who are the players who can benefit from this intervention aside from the consumers? There may be packaging companies, there may be companies which provide transportation or trucking, there may be producers of raw material which can be part of the value chain or get involved in the value chain. That's something that you need to identify. Commercial companies can be very much part of the ecosystem. This is how you move about. But the first thing is to identify the consumers. That's what must go first, and then others fall in. If there are enough consumers, if the critical mass is there to sustain the business or sustain the product, it is a given that you will find other interested players or already existing players who can move towards the social entrepreneur, or who can get into some sort of relationship, commercial relationship with the social entrepreneurs and enrich the ecosystem. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that was helpful. Thank you. So really looking for where you add value in the community and who is supporting people like you.
Right. So the idea that I have presented is based on our experience here in Bangladesh. We haven't consulted any any other research or anything to come up with what you have today on the slides. So it's very local and based on what we have here. Mm. Do you have any questions, Azam? Or yes, personal plan what obstacles prevent high growth businesses from launching? Um, high growth businesses from launching and growing. If the business is high growth, I don't think there would have, there would have been much problem in launching at least. But all sorts of obstacles can crop up as the business starts, especially again in the developing country context. There can be, issues with financing. There can be issues with working capital. There can be cost. Cost can go through the roof, and something that they have not recognized earlier. These are some of the problems. I think here at least that's what it appeared to me, that sometimes the business did not come up with a solution which was robust enough, or which was too costly to offer to the masses, or too costly to start with, and that somehow was not seen. So eventually, after some success or after some initial promise, they backfire and fail. So idea is to have some sort of pilot project, see how it goes, and get back to the drawing board, solve those problems that you encounter, especially problems with cost control, and then then again go to the market and see how it works. Does that answer the question? Okay.
So. All right, Shamim, I think unless anyone has other questions they wanted to send in, it looks like we're coming up on 9:45. So we can take a final question, but otherwise we're in good shape.
Great. I have some last parting comments to make. That is, I guess those who are competing, they need to be aware about the ecosystem, what the players in the ecosystem, because once you identify the major players in the ecosystem, you will be able to figure out what sort of benefit or relationships you can have with these different players. So the main word is the symbiotic relationships, because it's a two-way flow. Unless you have an awareness about the ecosystem, it's not going to be much helpful to come up with a good idea, because your business model must respond to the ecosystem. The business model must respond to the ecosystem. You must design the business in a way so that it is well supported by the ecosystem, if I may put it that way. So when they come up with the business plans, this is something that goes before you develop the business model, I suppose. This development of the sense of awareness of the ecosystem within which the social business is going to operate.